All right, mammalian zoogeography. So all this is exactly what it sounds like. You're taking you're taking animals, and you're deciding, or not deciding, but figuring out where they live in the world. And this may be as simple as where you would find squirrels in your area to a more broad geographic scale, like you find lions in Africa, right? So we're just matching up then living things with where they are on Earth, and that is more generally called biogeography. Mammals live on or near all continents and throughout all areas of the Earth. They're in the ocean, North, South America, all the continents. They don't really live on Antarctica, the land itself, but they do live on the sea ice and the ocean surrounding Antarctica. So some seals and sea lions and marine mammals live down there as well. To use and to understand where we find these mammals, we have range maps. This shows generally where a species can be found. Now, not necessarily all throughout there uniformly. There's obviously habitats in which they specialize. Some range maps also like to compare historical populations and ranges to present day, and often with the expansion of human habitation, you have a decrease in the range map of those mammals. When you look at mammals on the scale of the Earth, of our full biosphere, you find that there are latitudinal and elevation gradients in biodiversity. So these numbers on this map, in this figure, correspond with diversity. A higher number means more diverse. So as you go more north or more south, you actually see a decrease in diversity. Oftentimes, though, that decrease in diversity is increase with abundance. So you find caribou, which is a large mammal in these northern latitudes, and they're very abundant, but you don't find many other types of mammals, or at least not as many compared to as when you go down into the tropics. Okay, you find this same sort of gradient elevationally, and elevation also provides a gradient of biomes by which you can have a diverse number of organisms as well. So having a different elevational gradients, you will see along that elevational gradient a decrease in diversity, but overall you increase diversity with elevation gradients in an area. So how mammals spread throughout different regions is a mode of dispersal or inhabitation. Normal dispersal, where you have males or females leaving their natal origins where they were born and dispersing somewhere else, is how the nine-banded armadillo has increased in its range over the past 100 years or so. So it started down in more southern areas, western United States. And the nine-banded armadillo has increased in latitude in its range map, and now is almost up into Virginia. I think goes up into North Carolina. When a species disperses or distributes in a different area, as it adapts or as it finds a more suitable area, it can be split due to a process of vicariance, really just where a physical barrier separates two populations. And this can lead to allopatric speciation, but it can just be a separation. And so you see that this is a squirrel, a chipmunk, a range map, and you can see because of the mountains within the Rockies, this chipmunk range map is split into different populations, which gives it a disjunct distribution. It's not all complete, found uniform throughout that area. These ranges in which mammals are found are not static. They are variable and changing. And so a couple ways to look at evolution of where they are found are allochthonous evolution, where they originated in an area outside their current distribution. So let's say this chipmunk population originally was in southern Oregon, and then over time has moved into the Rockies. So that would be an allochthonous evolutions. Autochthonous evolution is where the original population is within the current range. So that's where you would have, let's say it was originally here in Nevada, it's spread all over the Rockies, but the original evolutionary lineage is also within that current range as well. When things disperse because of geographical barriers, there is often a corridor or a way in which they can go from one area to the other. Some examples are between Europe and Asia. There is a corridor which combines the two. Or Beringia is another great example. So the Bering Strait, which is now sea, used to be land. So within this area, you had a corridor. Oftentimes, these corridors filter what type of organisms can be there. So for Beringia, only polar adapted species or species adapted to the cold could actually disperse from Asia to North America. If you were a tropical species, you couldn't disperse up into the Arctic region, and thus you couldn't disperse over to North America, and back and forth, right? There is another way in which you can disperse it, and that is called the sweepstakes route, where you have some sort of generally random dispersal event where a population of mammals is not found where they're usually found. So an example of this is hoary bats are in Hawaii. They're the only species of bat there, and it's thought that a hoary bat was probably migrating and somehow got pushed in a storm out to Hawaii, and because there was food there, a population of them stuck around. But this was just a sweep. They were just pushed around. Probably should have died, but for some reason was able to survive and establish a population. All right. Globally, we can break up the Earth into biogeographic regions. So the Nearctic is the New World, temperate and Arctic biomes. Palearctic would be Old World, temperate and Arctic biomes. Then you have Neotropics, Afrotropics, Indo-Malayan, Australasian. These are all southern, mostly tropical regions. The Antarctic, and then the ocean. Okay, so we can make general observe general things about these different regions and the mammals that existed there. Okay, so it wasn't originally that we had these 7 regions. The continents have gone through many shifts throughout their existence, and this is due to plate tectonics. 500 million years ago was the last time all of the continents were together in a land mass called Pangaea. Here, the late Carboniferous shows some of the breakup which is occurring in Pangaea, and they continue to split and shift until we have now our 7 continents today, with Antarctica covering the southern pole, and most other land masses are over the northern latitudes. These events have affected speciation, distribution, radiation, and dispersal of mammals throughout the world, and we can attribute some of the patterns that we see to this geographic continental drift. Okay, so some of the things that occurred were also changes in climate. So in the Cretaceous, pretty much all land masses had the same uniform tropical climate. There wasn't a lot of variance throughout the Earth. Most land masses were very close together and around this tropical area. In the Paleocene and Eocene, now with each of these, you also have shifting of the continents, which allows for more different climates to affect the speciation of mammals. So in the Paleocene and Eocene, that's where the Earth reached its last thermal maximum. So at this point, the Earth was hotter than it's been since that time. And you had the development of a diversification of different types of biomes. So now we had dry woodlands, savannas, and scrublands, which started to appear. In the Oligocene, Miocene, and Pliocene, the sea level dropped because you had a cold period where you had significant glaciation. The continents also continued to drift apart, and global cooling then shaped a lot of the species that were there. So here you have a representation of a Beringian. So in the Bering Strait, when it was land, you had some of these mammals: a large bear, some large cats, some woolly mammoths. In this grassland area. In the Pleistocene and Holocene, you then had the appearance of North American scrub communities, and the Sahara Desert formed. And this was the last formation of Beringia. After that, you now have our current distribution and climate, which is very diverse. This is from the book and just part of it, but showing then these different epochs, the time periods, and some of the mammalian species and climates and biomes which developed with them. Okay, there is a very interesting phenomenon which occurred, which helps answer the question, why do we find so many marsupials in South America and not everywhere else? Well, that was probably due to being Australia and South America were once connected and separated from the other land masses, and that's where marsupials seem to thrive. But there was eventually a time where the two connected and formed a corridor through what is now Panama, and that then allowed the exchange of mammals between North and South America, so for them to go both ways. And this is called the Great American Biotic Interchange, or GABI, that's what I'm going to call it. And let's see, originally, most South American mammals before this were autochthonous and endemic. So they were only found in South America, and their ranges were within, where they had started. Metatherians were dominant, and they radiated extensively. But as North America and South America got closer, there was an exchange which occurred. So even before the land bridge corridor had formed, there was still interchange between them, and the first ones to come through were monkeys and bats. After the land bridge formed in Panama, the exchange occurred in both directions. So these were all the North American mammals that came south, and there were a bunch of South American mammals that came north as well. Many of them have since gone extinct. But by the Pleistocene, most of the exchange was from North to South America, and you can see that in this graph. So there was some interchange before the land bridge formed, but once it formed, then it was kind of even for a while until eventually most of it came from North to South America. And even now it's greater than it's ever been, but still more is going from North to South America than from South to North America. Okay, so a couple other interesting phenomena regarding mammalian zoogeography is the curious case of Madagascar. So this is an island which has been in isolation for a very long time off the coast of southern Africa. And islands which are in isolation are often centers of speciation and radiation of species, such as the mammals in Madagascar. So it was a refuge from the mainland, so anything which came there generally was not competing with other species. And so it has a high concentrated number of endemics. Also, because it is a rather big island, there are a lot of actually different biomes within Madagascar. So it has 32 species of lemurs. It has a diversity of tenrecs. Here's a couple of tenrecs here, very spiny, which fill a broad array of niches. And it has no ungulates and very few frugivores. So fruit are usually a highly attractive area for mammals to fill the niche, but they don't have that niche. So their habitat or that niche is incomplete and not exploited. And so Madagascar has a very unique and curious mammalian fauna, unlike anywhere else in the world. And you will find some lemurs in Africa, but not anywhere near the diversity in Madagascar. Another curious thing with islands is that they, because they isolate themselves from the mainland, you can have traits on there of mammals on those islands which are very unique. And it generally goes in one of two ways. Either you have a dwarfism occurring, or you have a giantism occurring. So this has happened with island foxes off the coast of California. These are related to the gray foxes, but they're just much smaller, and they eat different things because there's less things available on the island. So they're under different selection pressures. Generally, they think that a large mammal that disperses to these smaller islands is going to have to find a way to decrease its energy intake because there's not as many things available for it to eat. So maybe that contributes to its dwarfism. There are also Mediterranean elephants that were formed a dwarf type, and even a species within the genus of humans. So Homo florensis are these skeletons have been found of these very small branch of the Homo clade. Or it can also form giant morphs. So there's a giant rabbit, which was Neurolagus rex, found on islands, and this is an extinct species of giant hedgehog, which is about the size of a small dog. Yeah, that's it for island biogeography. We should have lots to talk about on Tuesday.